closer the league gets to the start of free agency, the louder the rumors begin to sound across the NFL. And for Dallas Cowboys fans, there is one name that keeps surfacing again and again in conversations around the league. Maxx Crosby. The dominant edge rusher from the Las Vegas Raiders has suddenly become the center of attention in trade speculation, and whether you believe the chances are high or low, one thing is clear. The Cowboys are at least paying attention to the situation. Reports circulating around the league suggest that several teams have reached out to the Raiders to explore the possibility of a deal. Dallas is one of the franchises that has been mentioned repeatedly as a potential landing spot. That alone tells you something important about how the organization views Crosby as a player. When a defensive star like that becomes even remotely available, front offices across the league pick up the phone. The Cowboys are no different. A player with Crosby's production, intensity, and consistency immediately changes the conversation about any defense he joins. But interest and execution are two very different things in the NFL. Making a phone call is easy. Actually completing a blockbuster trade is a completely different challenge, especially when the price tag is expected to be massive. The Raiders reportedly want a package that includes multiple first-round picks and possibly a young player as well. That kind of demand immediately complicates the situation for any team that is considering making a move. For the Cowboys, the question becomes whether the price would be worth it. Crosby is widely considered one of the best edge rushers in football. He is relentless, he plays with an incredible motor, and he consistently disrupts opposing offenses. Adding that type of presence to Dallas would instantly elevate the defense. In fact, there's a strong argument that Crosby would immediately become the most dominant player on that side of the ball. And that is exactly why the rumors refuse to go away. When a player of that caliber could theoretically be available, teams start evaluating every possible scenario. The Cowboys have the kind of draft capital that could make them competitive in a bidding war if they truly decided to push for it. The problem is that the organization has traditionally been cautious about sending away multiple high draft picks, especially first-round selections that could be used to build long-term depth. There have been conflicting reports about what Dallas might be willing to offer. Some sources suggest the Cowboys could be prepared to include 2 first-round picks in a deal. Others believe that is extremely unlikely and that the team would prefer to structure an offer around a smaller package. This kind of uncertainty is common during the weeks leading up to free agency, when information moves quickly and sometimes contradicts itself. Another factor that could influence the entire situation is Crosby himself. There has been speculation about whether he truly wants to leave Las Vegas or if he would simply be open to a move if the Raiders decide to rebuild. Those are two very different scenarios. If a player is actively pushing for a trade, the leverage shifts slightly toward the teams trying to acquire him. If the player is content staying where he is, the original team has far more control over the negotiations. For Dallas, timing may also play a role. With free agency about to begin, teams across the league are preparing to allocate their budgets and fill roster holes through different avenues. If the Cowboys decide the asking price for Crosby is simply too high, they could pivot quickly toward other pass rush options without sacrificing valuable draft assets. That possibility is something the front office will absolutely consider. While Crosby would be a massive addition, Dallas still has multiple areas on the roster that need attention. Investing a huge portion of the team's future draft capital into one player carries risk, even if that player is a proven star. The decision ultimately comes down to balancing immediate impact with long-term roster building. Still, it is impossible to ignore just how dominant Crosby has been over the past several seasons. Even on a team that has struggled to remain competitive, he has continued to produce at an elite level. His ability to disrupt plays in both the passing game and the running game has made him one of the most feared defenders in the league. Offensive lines have to account for him on every snap, and that type of presence creates opportunities for the rest of the defense. What makes his production even more impressive is the amount of playing time he handles. Crosby has consistently been among the league leaders in defensive snaps for edge rushers. That level of endurance and durability speaks volumes about his conditioning and his commitment to the game. He does not take plays off, and That relentless style is exactly the kind of mentality defensive coordinators love to build around. Last season, his ability to disrupt the run game stood out in particular. He consistently penetrated the backfield and forced ball carriers to change direction before plays could even develop. That type of impact does not always show up in highlight clips, but it completely alters how offenses approach a game plan. For the Cowboys, imagining Crosby in their defensive front is enough to get fans excited. Pairing a player like that with the existing talent already on the roster could create one of the most dangerous pass rush units in the entire league. Quarterbacks would have almost no time to breathe, and that kind of pressure can transform an already strong defense into something truly dominant. But again, it all comes back to cost. The Raiders know exactly how valuable Crosby is, and they're not going to let him go without receiving a return that reflects his importance. If multiple teams enter the bidding process, the price could climb even higher. And once that happens, front offices have to decide how far they are willing to go. Dallas could absolutely stay in the conversation if they choose to. The team has the resources to put together a competitive offer, and the appeal of playing for a franchise with championship expectations could make the situation attractive from Crosby's perspective as well. The challenge will be determining whether the opportunity aligns with the long-term vision for the roster. As the opening of free agency gets closer, decisions across the league will start happening quickly. Teams will commit to major signings, trades will materialize out of nowhere, and situations that once seemed uncertain will suddenly become very clear. The Crosby storyline is one of those situations that could change rapidly depending on what happens over the next few days. For now, the Cowboys remain a team to watch in the conversation. They have acknowledged the possibility, they have evaluated the scenario, and they understand exactly what kind of player Crosby is. Whether that interest eventually turns into a serious trade push is something that could become clearer as negotiations around the league continue to unfold. While the conversation around Max Crosby continues to dominate the headlines, the Cowboys are also quietly evaluating other possible directions in case that blockbuster move never materializes. That is the reality of this time of year in the National Football League. Front offices cannot afford to focus on just one scenario. They need backup plans, alternative targets, and flexibility to react quickly when the market begins to move. One name that has started to emerge as a possible alternative option is Trey Hendrickson. The veteran pass rusher has been one of the most productive edge defenders in the league over the past several seasons, and if Dallas ultimately decides not to pursue Crosby at the price being discussed, shifting attention toward Hendrickson could make a lot of sense. The biggest difference between the two situations is the cost. While acquiring Crosby would require a massive trade package, pursuing Hendrickson would be a completely different type of investment. Hendrickson's skill set fits extremely well within what the Cowboys like to do defensively. His primary strength is simple but incredibly valuable, getting after the quarterback. He has built a reputation as a relentless pass rusher who consistently finds ways to collapse the pocket and disrupt passing plays. In a defensive scheme that prioritizes pressure on the quarterback, that kind of ability becomes incredibly attractive. Another factor working in his favor is how well he could slide into a defined role. The Cowboys do not necessarily need a player who has to carry every responsibility on the edge. What they need is someone who can come in, focus on attacking the quarterback, and consistently generate pressure when the defense needs it most. Hendrickson has proven throughout his career that he could do exactly that. Of course, the timing of free agency adds another layer of urgency to all of these decisions. Once the legal negotiating window opens, teams across the league will begin making aggressive moves to secure the players they want before the market becomes even more competitive. That means organizations cannot wait too long to decide which direction they're going to take. For Dallas, that decision could arrive sooner than many people expect. If the trade market for Crosby continues to escalate and multiple teams begin offering major draft capital, the Cowboys may determine that the cost simply does not align with their overall roster strategy. When that happens, the smart move is to pivot quickly rather than remain stuck chasing a deal that may never happen. At the same time, the Raiders themselves still hold all the leverage in the Crosby situation. They are under no obligation to move him if they feel the offers are not strong enough. In fact, they could choose to hold onto their star defender and wait for the market to shift later on. Sometimes patience creates leverage, especially when other teams begin to realize that the players they were targeting are no longer available. But that approach carries risk as well. The longer negotiations drag on, the more teams may decide to fill their needs through other methods. Once a franchise commits its salary cap space or its draft assets somewhere else, it becomes far less likely that they will circle back into the bidding. That is why situations like this often reach a resolution relatively quickly once the offseason officially gets underway. Meanwhile, Dallas also has other roster areas that require attention, particularly at linebacker. The position became a concern throughout last season, and it is something the coaching staff will undoubtedly look to address during free agency. Depth, consistency, and reliability are all factors that need to improve in that part of the defense. There are already a few names around the league who could become potential targets, especially players who have shown flashes of strong performance but may not command massive contracts. Those types of additions are often where the Cowboys prefer to operate in free agency. Instead of chasing the biggest names available, they frequently look for players who can provide solid value while still allowing the team to maintain financial flexibility. That strategy could apply perfectly to the linebacker situation. Bringing in a player who has experience, understands defensive responsibilities, and can contribute immediately would help stabilize a position that struggled with consistency. Sometimes the most important signings are not the ones that dominate headlines, but the ones that quietly strengthen the roster in key areas. Another storyline worth watching involves the internal decisions the Cowboys must make with their own players. Every offseason brings difficult choices about contracts, roster spots, and long-term planning. The front office has to balance immediate competitiveness with the future structure of the team, and that balancing act becomes even more challenging when potential trades or major signings are part of the equation. Draft capital also remains an important part of the conversation. The Cowboys have traditionally valued their picks and relied on the draft to build the core of the roster. Trading away multiple high selections would represent a significant shift in that philosophy. While it is not impossible, it is something the organization would need to feel extremely confident about before making such a commitment. That is why discussions surrounding Crosby continue to generate so much debate among fans. On one hand, adding a player of his caliber could immediately elevate the defense to another level. On the other hand, giving up valuable draft assets could limit the team's ability to address other needs in the future. Both perspectives have valid points, and ultimately the front office must decide which path provides the best chance to compete. For now, the Cowboys appear to be doing exactly what smart teams do during this period of the offseason. They are gathering information, evaluating possibilities, and preparing for multiple outcomes. Whether the final result ends up being a blockbuster trade, a strategic free agency signing, or a combination of smaller moves, the next few weeks will play a critical role in shaping the roster for the upcoming season. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Dallas Cowboys. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Whispers around the corridors of the Dallas Cowboys headquarters suggest that the franchise may have quietly secured its long-awaited insurance policy at quarterback. While the organization has not made any dramatic announcements, league insiders believe the Cowboys have finalized what many inside the building are calling a Plan B solution, a move designed to stabilize the depth chart behind starter Dak Prescott. For months, the question hovering over Dallas was simple. What happens if Prescott is unavailable? The team's front office publicly expressed confidence in its roster, but behind the scenes there was a growing understanding that the Cowboys needed a reliable backup capable of stepping in without dramatically altering the offensive identity crafted by head coach Mike McCarthy. According to sources close to the situation, that concern may now be addressed. The organization is believed to have reached an agreement with a veteran quarterback who fits the system and brings experience reading defenses at a high level. The idea is not to create controversy around the starting role, but rather to ensure continuity if the unexpected happens during the long grind of the National Football League season. Inside the locker room, the move is reportedly being welcomed as a sign of pragmatic roster building. Teammates understand that championship ambitions require depth at every position, especially the most important one on the field. For a franchise that carries immense expectations every year, the margin between a deep postseason run and a disappointing campaign can hinge on a single injury. Fans across Texas, long accustomed to riding the emotional roller coaster that accompanies Cowboys seasons, appear cautiously optimistic. The possibility that Dallas now has a dependable alternative under center has sparked a wave of relief among supporters who have seen how quickly fortunes can change in the NFL. Of course, until the team formally confirms the details, the identity of the quarterback remains the subject of speculation. But if the rumors circulating around the league are accurate, the Cowboys may have quietly solved one of their most delicate roster questions, and in doing so, taken a subtle yet meaningful step toward protecting their championship hopes. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Dallas Cowboys, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We always look forward to your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.